We need you to put your life on the line for science and profit. Make sure to intern at Cornwell Consolidated. The future is here, today.
We're having an AMA, everybody. It's time for another one of Wargamer's AMA events. It's a privilege for us to welcome today Adam Holloway, one of the game designers at Parable Games, the principal designer, lead game designer on Parable's new kind of expansion on Shiver. It's horror RPG. It's the new expansion, Shiver Corporate, which we'll be talking about a lot very shortly, I'm sure. A rather sort of strange and satirical twist on the pulp horror RPG that has kind of made this company's name. So yes, hello Adam. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, absolute pleasure to be here. Very much looking forward to it.
Fantastic. I'm glad to hear that very much. Like a couple of little bits of housekeeping before we proceed. Firstly, for anyone who hasn't come to one of these events before, this is an AMA. We are here to ask questions of Adam. The reason we like to do things like this is, you guys know what wargamer.com is. We're the most read tabletop games news website in the world. We do a lot of interviews with wonderful creators and designers and publishers like Adam. But it's more interesting if we do them with you in them, because it makes for more of an event. But also, as we always say at these things, you often think of much better questions than I would, because you're not an extremely exhausted journalist that has to spend all their time being terrified of Google. You get to live a little. So we're really glad to have you here. Be thinking of your questions. If you click on the little speech bubble in the top right of your screen, that will open the text chat for this stage channel, and that's where you should put your questions. So type your questions into there. I will then read them in my voice, which hopefully is acceptable to your ears, and Adam will answer them unless they're rude, in which case he won't. That's the first thing to call out. Second thing to call out is that thanks to the generosity of the lovely people at Parable Games, we have a couple of starter sets for the original Shiver horror TTRPG to give away to lovely people who ask questions, polite questions, in the AMA. So if you want to win your very own starter set for Shiver, better get those questions coming in to give yourself a good chance of being that lucky person. That's about all of my housekeeping, so we can get on to some questions. As usual, I'll kick us off. I've got some questions to get the ball rolling. But like I say, get yours coming in, please, folks. So kick off, before we get into Shiver Corporate, which we will, before we get into Shiver Corporate, for those who haven't tried Shiver or come across Shiver yet, tell us a little bit about what that game is all about, how it came about, when that kind of first dropped, how it works, what it's like, what it's not like as an RPG. Tell us about Shiver.
Yeah, absolutely. So Shiver is, we think of it as the scary movie role-playing game. So it's a spooky, scary toolkit for anything from Scooby-Doo to Scream, Hellraiser, Aliens, any original spooky story, anything set in a world that you are a fan of. We wanted to make a system that was essentially really easy to grab and adapt to those needs, specifically for horror of whatever tone and subgenre you are comfortable with. So if you want to do family-friendly Scooby-Doo, that is one of our most popular things people actually do. If you want to do hardcore Friday the 13th, absolutely really easy to do that as well. Charlie started kind of throwing around the idea of designing this back in 2018. We were working we met in film school, and then we ended up both working at this post-production house in London in a basement with no windows. And I think neither of us had really played any RPG games outside of video games. And we'd never played a tabletop game until about 2016. We both love board games, but we never really made the leap into dice-led storytelling games. And we started with D&D. And as Charlie was running it while we were working this job, he would try and do these spooky adventures. And, horror themed things like in haunted houses, and it's like, well, my character's a wizard and he teleports into another dimension, and the assassin just stabs every zombie in there. Like your characters are so powerful, it really wasn't giving us, it was fun, but it wasn't what Charlie wanted from the adventure, and we weren't really getting that side of it. So what he then did was start working on like, okay, well, this is a spooky, scary system, and one of our friends was like, well, I want to learn a lot of new rules. And so Charlie was like, well, okay, we're in the narrative, so like narrative kind of rules here, and I'll make sure the skills are really simple for you to grab. And he was like, okay, well, I don't want, the other one was like, I don't want to use too many dice. And he was like, all right, well, we'll use a D6 and a D8, and we'll take the maths out of it. And so it's sort of developed organically over a period of time, but it was just a home game ultimately until about 2020, when Charlie introduced the game to Barney, his brother, who is big in the sort of gaming sphere already. He runs Seventh City Collectibles in Nottingham, which is big on Pokemon trading cards, miniatures, all of that stuff. And Barney just really loved it. He has played a lot of RPGs. He was very in the scene with it, and he was like, this could be something. So the two brothers founded Parable Games. And I and a few other playtesters kept running Shiver as much as we could. I think I was the first person to run a game of Shiver that wasn't Charlie. And at that point, I didn't work with it. I was really loving it. I ran a game that we were going to play a Monster of the Week game with someone else. Someone dropped out at the last minute. And so I was like, well, don't cancel it, because I kind of know how Charlie's game works. Let's run a test. And then Charlie was like, yeah, sick. What are you going to do? I don't know. I've got 15 minutes on a walk back from my day job. I'll figure something out. And I'd watched Tremors the night before, 1980s, Sandworms, Kevin Bacon. And I did Tremors, but I set it in the Peak District, and I made it giant rabbits, and I called it Thumpers. And that was the big Act 1 twist reveal. And absolutely great. Probably the best RPG game I've ever run. I had such a good time with it. And then, the game went to Kickstarter and took off really well. The first campaign did amazing. And then on the back of that, Charlie started working on Gothic, which is this huge first expansion to Shiver. But ultimately, the core system was designed to be easy to run. If you've never, played anything beyond Snakes and Ladders, you could run a Shiver game as well as play it. We wanted it to be parity on both sides, so that the director, which is our GM, is as much of a player as the cast of characters running around and getting killed. And we wanted to make sure that you could run whatever kind of spooky scary you wanted in it. You would never be forced to buy an expansion to do slashers and blockbusters, even though we did make those expansions. You can do them yourself with the core system. We didn't want to take that away from people. But that's it in a nutshell. It's a symbol-based skill game that keeps you in the story while you kind of run around, try and survive whatever haunted happenings your director has for you in store.
Fantastic. It's nice to hear the human story behind the original development of a game like this, always, especially when there's so few people that just kind of come together and put it together. But a couple of questions started to come through. Some of them relate to corporate specifically, so I'll save those for a moment. But we do have a question from Titenji. So I've been seeing you around in London-based events, Comic-Con, Badger, for a while now, but not had the funds to get into Shiver as I might like when I've seen you. How would you recommend getting into it, especially if you're trying to decide whether to take the plunge on buying the book for yourself to run regularly?
It's a really good question. So we do a lot of conventions around the country and a lot in London. We're there this weekend actually, but any new RPG is always seen as kind of a risk to get into. I always say to people, I understand it. It's like a board game, but with homework. You've got to read the book, you got to figure it out, and then you get to have the game, the fun part. So there is this kind of this leap into the unknown, I guess. If you, and as well with indie RPGs, anything that's not Dungeons and Dragons, Call of Cthulhu, or Pathfinder, really, you're going to struggle to find a frequent game at stores that's running it because people just often don't know it exists. With Shiver, we realize that one thing we do is we put out quick starts. So there is a freely accessible quick start for Shiver, which has the basic rule set. It has the explanation of the dice system. It's got a conversion table for using a regular D6 and D8, but we also have a free dice roller on our website that lets you enter your character's stats and get the proper symbols in, which we recommend because it just makes the game run so much quicker, faster, and more intuitively. And yeah, basically on that quick start, you get those rules, you get some pre-made characters, and an adventure ready to run, which is, I believe, a zombie office dungeon crawl, which is based on the production house that we definitely cribbed from when we were working there. So like you can get to try Shiver without having kind of the big purchase of it, I would say. And the other thing is, if we have people who are like, okay, I've been at the convention and I've flipped through the book, and they want to get it, but we want to make sure they're kind of walking away with the best opportunity to start. We usually bundle books together and stuff like that. I mean, the other thing is we made the the starter set, which for the price of the core rule book, you get a custom starter adventure, you get a half a director's screen in the lid, you get a set of dice, you get a condensed core rule book, which is like a slimmed down version with like pretty much everything you'll need to run for a good while. You get a map and 7 premium character sheets and the stuff to make your own characters anyway. So that's the same price as getting the core system, but you get everything. So we try and cater to those kind of issues in the TTRPG scene. The other thing you can do is, join our Discord and look for people who are running games and jump in as a player and see if you really enjoy it. We're at Dragon Meet in the London Excel Centre this weekend, and there are at least 3 games of Shiver that I know of going on. Which are open. So, if you're in London and you want to check out Dragon Meet, by all means, go in and sign up.
Nice. It's a pretty complete answer there for that one. I do like hearing always when a game has proprietary or custom dice. Like coding a quick digital dice roller for it is a very, very, very pro player move.
The proprietary dice, absolutely. The whole design of the dice was, how do we make this accessible for players and for people who aren't necessarily RPG players or people who are just dyscalcular, for people who think that the maths is getting in the way of having a relaxing time. And nothing kills tension in a horror story like arithmetic anyway. Charlie loves to say, like, if you roll if the axe is swinging for your head and you roll a 13, you don't know what that means. But if you roll the Shiver dice and you get no wit symbols to dodge, but you get all of the strange symbols, it's gone really, really badly. And that's part of the joy of it. So Charlie was very keen on using these dice and making sure that everyone would have the opportunity to play with them, regardless of, like, some people can spend £40 on a book and some people can't. Some people play in other people's games and borrow their book, and they can't necessarily afford to buy a set of proprietary dice for every game. Use it on your phone. We have dice, or you can get the dice symbols in Roll20 as well, and we're looking at getting them on way more dice spectrums. So, yeah, with proprietary dice and with everything with Shiver, it's player first is very much the way we like to think of it.
Yeah, I just think it's a cool move for sure. All right, I think it's probably time we started talking about corporate then. We've covered off what Shiver is for those who haven't played it, but the new thing is corporate. This is an expansion to Shiver. Shiver is kind of setting agnostic to a certain extent. The vibe is inspired by horror, but it's setting agnostic to your kind of favorite horror movies, as you just said. Corporate's more specific. Corporate has its own weird concept to it that I'm still not completely getting. So before we glom onto, there's a couple of questions about inspiration behind it as well that's coming up already in the chat, but I want to hear your kind of elevator pitch for what corporate is first.
Okay.
What's this game as compared to the main game?
So Shiver Corporate is a twisted, darkly comedic take on working for a huge, almost incalculably huge mega corporation in this wonderful late-stage capitalist world. We're taking the someone described this as like very similar to like the vibe of Control, the video game. I've heard that one. Someone described this as like if the X-Files and The Office had a baby. There is very much this kind of natural sense of humor to what we're doing with corporate, but we're taking the whole thing as you're ordinary people, you are interns. And you are working for essentially the worst company imaginable that we could create. And that's Cornwell Consolidated. And all of your lovely interns are just basically unpaid cannon fodder for whatever weird things the company has in its underground research facilities. So yeah, it's where someone during the early playtest of one of these adventures had said that they found this like the most therapeutic game of Shiver they'd played. I don't know. There's an adventure in a HR department that is in the book where the HR department has succumbed to infighting and become a weird post-apocalyptic society just on one of the floors. They dumped all the sand in there from one of their kind of office beach parties and made this post-apocalyptic wasteland. And they worked in HR and they found that adventure so sort of freeing to go in and role play that. And so yeah, like it's dark corporate horror with a kind of a very bloodstained grin.
I've got to say the concept appealed to me immediately looking at the Kickstarter. Like you really sold me with the little cartoon squirrel mascot for this evil SCP-like corporation, which is its version of Clippy. And any even sort of half-baked satire of generative AI is always going to make me happy. So well played. Yeah.
Funnily enough, and I guess this is the other thing tonally that made corporate just so prescient. And people talking about inspiration. We said the inspiration for Core Shiver was like, to have something we could play that other people could pick up easily. The inspiration for corporate was me kind of lamenting things that were happening. But there was also a kind of a sad amount of prescience to it where I came up with Safety Squirrel before the big boom of, ChatGPT and everything that was really taking off. And we were like, oh no, Safety Squirrel's too close to the mark. We discussed this idea that Cornwell would try to rebrand the word food so that they could trademark it and it doesn't have to mean an edible substance when it's their trademark. And then another company in America, like the next week, the news came out and they were trying to redefine what nutritional meant. And so we were doing these things and then seeing this kind of weird Black Mirror reflection. Even one, we talk about having the Wi-Fi is, all corporate Wi-Fi is powered by the Infinet, which is their infernal desk PC powered by the blood of unlucky interns. And then Blizzard released a tower PC with liquid cooling with the blood of their employees in it as like a fundraiser for a blood drive. And I was like, that's not great though.
I feel like you're kind of the Simpsons-ing a little bit. Like you're saying things that then come
we go to some places that the world hasn't caught up with yet. And I hope that they don't. But there's been a little bit of that, which is unfortunate, but funny. So yeah, at least there's that.
These demonic kind of characters are forces in the corporation because they're drinking the blood of interns or using it to power their intranet. And in the artworks, there's these great kind of cartoon monsters. Can you tell us a little bit more about like who are they? Is there a set lore behind them, or can they be whoever you want?
So the Cornwell Consolidated is the kind of the big untouchable megacorp, which they're in the core rulebook. They're in the quick start as well. They're the villains who own the underground research facility that they accidentally let the zombies out into and then forget to evacuate their low-paid staff. So Cornwell have always been there. Charlie really wanted. He just kind of made them up as very quickly. It's like it's a setting agnostic game, but if anyone needs a placeholder villain, these guys work. It's the guy in the helicopter at the end of Small Soldiers who rocks up and pays everyone away. They're the people that try and kill ET and pull guns on kids. They're a flexible, evil, faceless organization. So we had Cornwell. And then there wasn't really any internal law to Cornwell. Charlie went on to Lance, which is our kind of heroic good guy British organization investigating all the secret things. And Cornwell kind of was that was it. We didn't go back to it. And I started doodling some Cornwell stuff. And I was like, well, what if they had all these weird and terrible monsters? And because they're so huge, they're so powerful, half of the stuff they have, they don't even really care about. They just want to have it. So what does that look like? And the answer is, it's weird, it's dangerous, they don't understand it, it's not profitable, so they'll keep it. It's a company asset with a capital A. That's how we refer to these monsters. Monsters, artifacts, so basically specimens, artifacts, and abnormalities or anomalies, which are basically... A specimen is a weird creature they found that is sentient. An artifact is not a living creature, but still might be sentient. They might have made it or they might have found it. We have weird things like the Excalibur, which is a sword stolen from an anime dimension that one of the interns gets sucked into. And it's just a weird little cat-faced sword. It's really upsetting. But then you have like the quantum stapler, which is a failed prototype to make more time-efficient document management, and they class as artifacts. But then all of these things that they have, they just store, they lock away, and they're not going to trust their decent employees to deal with them because most of them are still lethal, and some of them actively need to drink blood or else they'll go on a rampage. The safety squirrel itself is one of these assets that Cornwell just can't get rid of now. It's almost feral. Its dedication to safety and what it thinks of safety might not be that safe. So they have the intern program, and the interns are these unpaid, unlucky saps who get to deal with you're going to do an alien autopsy, which sounds cool and mind-blowing. Except it's the alien that the company doesn't really care about. They can't find a good use for it, and they don't even care enough to check that it's dead before they throw it down in the elevator to you. And oh no, now you're stuck in here with a very angry feral extraterrestrial. So we do create some assets for the book. The book has some great examples of how to utilize the game's Doom Clock, which is a tension mapping mechanic through these things, or just how to make a fun dynamic enemy that's weird and kind of sci-fi that works in an office environment. Some of them are NPCs. I think you're talking about Blarg is one of the actual demons hanging around the water cooler. He's one of my favorites. He's just a nice guy. So at one point, the supply office opens a portal to hell, and the people that work in there, it's just another office. It's just another day. That's their version of hell. And they're just other employees that technically occupy the same space as everyone else. So we create these things, we fit them into Cornwell, but what we always do is make sure what we're doing is super transparent. So you would be able to say, well, I really like this idea of the keys, the car keys, that if your player ever mentions them, they vanish. But if they keep forgetting they have them, then that's great, and they get a bonus to their luck. If you want to make a kind of a forgettable item that punishes your players for remembering it's there, you have a template for that. If you want to make something that is jump scary and teleporty, then we have the Greyhound, which is absolutely based on my first rescue dog, who just had a habit of sneaking into rooms with a very weird kind of poise and shadow cast on the wall. So like it's all there in the book as part of the setting, but we still try and keep true to the letting players and directors make their own settings. So it's still treading a line, right?
I think there's more than enough examples already to give people a sense for whether the sense of humor and the kind of cocktail of Portal and Control and Severance, as Morsley brought up as well.
I saw someone mention Severance. Severance was another one that kind of came out while we were working on the game, and we were like, yeah, that's definitely in the vein. We referenced in our inspirations, we put Severance 2022 and Severance 2006, which for any British horror fans will know is a slasher movie starring Danny Dyer about a corporate retreat gone wrong. a very violent, bloody movie, but also this very elegant Apple TV show. And we're like, yeah, this is us. We're right in the middle here. This is it.
That's going on the watch list. Never heard of that. Yeah, I feel like that's a very vivid depiction of the setting, which is one that definitely appeals to me. One thing I want to ask is, we know where we're playing now and what the things are that we're likely to encounter. What kind of stories is this game kind of expecting us to tell? What kind of structure are we looking at expecting to play longer campaigns or shorter campaigns, or monster of the week type things, or one shots? Obviously the book presumably has some some example kind of adventures, or like what does a game of Shiver Corporate look like?
So Shiver Corporate, we've put in the book, I think it's 5 full-length adventures. Now, classic Shiver, the core rulebook really will let you do whatever you want. You can do a long-form campaign. You can do a one-shot. What it's really geared towards, the core rulebook, I will say, is it's great for a one-shot. If you want to do a horror movie night tonight with your friends, one and done, 3 hours, credits roll, who lives, who dies, it's great for that. It's also great for serialization, which is where the more Scooby-Doo stuff comes in, doing sequels. So it's like, it's a one-shot, but if we want to play with these characters again, we can do some stuff with that. We can do Scream 2. We can do Scream 8. You have that opportunity. With the expansions, we kind of tweak the way that system works a bit. So with Gothic, we introduce more campaign management for long form campaigns like classic D&D. Gothic has this kind of fantasy horror edge to it. Slasher and Blockbuster give you more sequel stuff. What you're getting with Corporate is these adventures, which could be done as one-shots if you trim a little bit of content, but they're mostly extremely varied adventures that take the Shiver mechanics and give you something new with them that's weird science related, and usually not useful weird science. So for instance, we did a sequel to Corporate Rises, which is that adventure I told you about before in the basement of the huge company. But we set it in space because I didn't know where else to go with it. So you're in space and it's not quite zombies anymore, and you have to cut them up into pieces. Anyone who's played Dead Space is rolling their eyes right now. But that was my big love letter to Dead Space with another corporate grin. We called it severance packages. And basically I made a mechanic for like, this is how you do randomized decapitations. And how you create enemies that are more than just one and done kind of nightmares, more body horror stuff. With the HR adventure, which I talked about a bit, which is, I think, called Workplace at War. In that one, we do how to like random roll tables for making weird office weaponry. So it's, again, not as much science, but just like, how do you take a stapler and turn that into a lethal pair of nunchucks? And then, we play with the safety squirrel a bit. We do some adventures that really delve into him. The other thing we do with this book is we bring you a lot of what we call case files. So a case file is like a published adventure, but we streamline it. We've had such a good response to this from DMs who are like, well, I love running games. I love putting my own flair on it. I don't like running pre-written adventures necessarily or all the time, but I don't always have the time to do, 2 hours of planning and prep for a session. So a case file is something new and unique to focus, bring it all together. It could be a monster. It could be a mechanic. It could be in Corporate. One of them is a bunch of diseases. And then we give you an outline of how you might use those adventures. So if you were using film language, like a treatment, and we break it down into 3 acts, or we'll break down some puzzles you can do if you want to go play with the Puzzlemancer, which is an asset that Cornwell really don't want anything to do with because he just loves riddles. And we kind of streamline. So like you get to go like, oh, actually, yeah, I really like this. There's enough material here to cover the base building blocks. I get to plan out the rest of the structure of the adventure. And the best response we've had is like, cuts your prep time down to like half an hour, and it still feels like an entirely new adventure. So there's a whole bunch of case files in there as you build up this facility. Each adventure and each case file is a different department. You have unique and incurable diseases, non-profitable. That's a department. You have the safety squirrel department, which is a floor of an entirely like redundant safety squirrel designs. Like, what if they tried to make a safety squirrel Furby? It just ate a kid, and now it hides in the ball pit down there. Don't touch it. And, you have a department that is entirely dedicated to the field of whether or not if you put enough closets and beds in a room, will a monster eventually come out of it? Because Cornwall have so much money and power that they will just try and figure out. They will throw it all at the wall, and if it doesn't stick, that's fine. They've got more wall. It's just all of these things. So basically, a lot of it is giving you these adventures, giving you the case files, giving you all these new mechanical things that accentuate that, but hopefully also having you go like, oh, I really like this. I can make my own with it. That's it.
Neat concept. I like it when pre-built adventures come in like more than one level of pre-buildedness. It's tricky because each of those levels is suitable for a subset of a subset of a subset, and each of those levels requires a slightly different kind of creative process. So, from my perspective,
it is. It's very. Not a lot of companies are doing it, and there's good reason for that. And it's difficult when it's Shiver because it's a story first game where we preach films, and we have to kind of tell you what the third act's going to look like. Otherwise, you're going to struggle running the first act. So in Slasher and Blockbuster, where those adventures are much chunkier, like big epic, like covering a decade in slasher history, we definitely avoid any on the rails. We avoid a lot of that, but we'll do structured chase sequences because we're like, you kind of need to get from A to B. This is how we've done it. You can do whatever you want, and in actual fact, as long as they end up at B. But like with corporate, it was a lot more fun to just be like, have at it, us. As long as they're chopping up the bodies, as long as they're negotiating peace with the HR tribes, it's all good.
Very, very strange. There's a question from Molly, who's Wargamer's in-house horror expert. I mean, I think she could give you a run for your money. I think in terms of total movies watched per annum. There's a question from Molly saying, "There's a lot about corporate that sounds very funny." I agree. That's what appeals to me. But how do you maintain the horror vibe alongside that? Like. Obviously, there's a huge relationship between horror and comedy. Horror movies always have like an aspect of the same kind of dramatic traits as comedy. But we've mainly talked about funny so far. So how does that relationship, like Molly says, how do you maintain the pure horror vibe alongside the corporate jokes?
Yeah, so it's something we get a lot with Shiver, because when we're writing an adventure, we will, regardless of which book it's going to go in and what style it is, we will always think about, like, as written, do we see this as we borrow from the old BBFC 12, 15, 18, and usually we'll aim for a 15 and we'll put a sense of humor to the story, because that way it's really easy for people to take that out and dial up the scares and the tension, and then they have an 18 really tense adventure, and it's easier for other people to introduce their friends to something they might not have already played. With corporate, there were times when I was writing it where I was like, how far away does the horror get from me? Because the horror comes from the existence of these poor interns waking up every day, having to do this over and over again and experiencing, excruciating deaths at the hands of untold nightmares, and they don't even get a paycheck. And, sometimes they're even billed for the mess they leave on the way out. They're cloned, and their clones are all mangled, and they're living this hellscape. So corporate was one of those things where the more people, when I talk about it, people are like, well, that just sounds funny. And it's like, it is funny until you really start getting into it. And it's kind of bleak. And a lot of stuff comes from this kind of idea of taking like real world things, talking about generative AI, talking about things like that, and then having that exist in a world where we can kind of laugh at it a little bit while it is still quite dark. That's part of it. The other thing that I always say is your games are as scary as you want to run them. If you want to take my corporate adventures and make it more SCP, you can absolutely do that through the same thing I've said before. Like you will trim those elements from it. You will see the fat that you don't like, and because it's all very transparent. But we do have some mechanics that aid that. So the dice are always really good. You don't lose your tension with these dice because no one's ever asking what 13 means. Thank you, Charlie. But also, as your players fail, they can maybe flavor how they failed. Their failure might get worse depending on what results they did get, if they didn't get the symbol they were looking for. And if you fail with strange, you tick up what we call the doom clock. Now, it sounds strange, but it's basically runs from 0 to midnight, and it doesn't mean your game ends at midnight. What it does mean is that every 15 minutes on it, something terrible is going to happen, and your players know that. And it solves the problem of people saying, well, I roll to pick this lock, and you fail. And it's like, well, I roll again. It solves that. Because if you're at 14 minutes and they know at 15 something horrible is going to happen, they don't necessarily even want to pick that lock anymore. They might want someone else to try and kick the door down, because they know with failure comes this very tense chance. And especially when you start racking up towards the 45 and midnight, the tension is always there. And that's the kind of thing, when Charlie and I designed these adventures, we really focus on tension, because tone is going to come down to you. As the director, we have the utmost faith in the people that run our games to know whether they want to be funny or whether they're a really scary person. And I'll say right now, it is really hard to run any RPG and be scary. You have Dread is an interesting game, but you're just playing Jenga. With a story attached to it. At the end of the day, I don't think it's any more scary than playing a game of Jenga. I think it's a great tension tool. You have the game with a number of candles that I always get wrong, because I just think of John Hughes' 16 Candles, and it ain't that. That again, great game, but very limited in its scope. But it does really capture the fear. But we've seen directors take this game, and not with corporate necessarily. I will say corporate will probably give you a hard run to make it super scary. It will have moments. It will definitely have moments and scenes and actions that will be scary. But overall, it's if you can laugh because you got fired today and your character just got set on fire, that's what I want. But we've seen directors take our adventures and run very thematic settings with smoke machines and lights dimmed, candlelight, and really just terrify the hell out of their players with our material. And we still love that as well. So yeah, it's a good question. I gave a very thorough but definitely vague answer, I would say.
Answer, it can be in all of those ways, down to the director's decision and management, but corporate's probably not going to ever be as scary as the scariest games of Shiver.
Yeah, I mean, we did a book called Classified, which was more, I would say, Poe-faced for the majority of it. You're investigating serial killers, and there are consequences to getting it wrong, quite severe ones. You are dealing with cosmic horror elements as well. And Gothic is extremely dark throughout, but with corporate, we realized, like, if we were doing something corporate horror-y and we just got lost in the mire and muck and the meanness of it, we had less fun. And that's why it's ended up being this almost like dark sense of humor game compared to the others. And again, you could run it as a dead serious SCP, and really tweak it and just have like, well, what if it was in your office and what if hell broke loose? You can absolutely do that. And you can do that with the mechanics and materials I put in this book. It just probably wouldn't suit, the weirdest adventures that we've written.
There's a really interesting question from Morsley, which is sort of tapping into the fact that you're film guys. You did film. And that's filtered into all of the film influences in Shiver. They ask, in recent years, the language of film and television has been adopted by RPG developers when describing their storytelling. What do you've done that in the last 15 minutes a couple of times. What do you think GMs can take from film and television to enhance their one-shots and campaigns?
It's okay. Pacing. So I occasionally help out GMs who are wanting to make a leap, not with Parable, just in general. I find myself helping a lot of GMs who want to make a leap from personal GMing to professional GMing. And the first thing I always kind of say is, pacing. So we use the language of films. Every story needs to be in 3 acts. You need an idea of what that third act is. That's where a lot of big first-time GMs go wrong, is that they're like, well, my fantasy story is epic and huge. And it's like, great, it'll run for 1 year. You or your players will lose interest or focus, and then the campaign ends. And that's every campaign of D&D I've ever been involved in. Not to besmirch D&D, absolutely wouldn't do that. Please don't come at me. But so that's it. It's figuring out that pacing. But the other thing was I played in a game once with someone who was really, really desperate to be a professional GM, and I played with them for 3 hours, and we never really got out of Act 1 of their fantasy game. Like a lot of it was them playing multiple NPCs talking to each other. And if you ask yourself when you're writing these scenes, are my players because they're not your cast. Even though I use that language, they're not actually your cast. You don't get to tell them what to do. You know, they are free agents. They will have as much agency as your friends have kind of in real life. And if you're making them sit there for 20 minutes while you role play 2 NPCs talking back and forth, is that fun? No, you've really got to respect your players' time. If this is their one game night of the week, think about films. Think about how, I mean, we're an attention deficit society. How quick does a film take to get going? And most films will really break out of Act 1 in 10 to 15 minutes. If it's going on much longer than that, you're kind of stuck. So we also had this issue where some people were thinking like, well, things are in 4 acts. Some plays are in 4 acts, some plays are in 2. It's like, no. Structurally, there are 3 acts. Act 1 ends when your players really start getting to grips with it. So with us, Act 1 is usually a scene or a setup line, and that's it. And then Act 2 is your players just having a bulk of fun. Absolutely. That pacing is the huge advice, and structure. You don't have to have like the most in-depth twisty story, like you don't have to write it all out beforehand and have this amazing screenplay. It has to be well paced. We have to get through it, and we have to want to get through it. That's what I mean. I have a master's in screenwriting. I wasted a lot of money to bring you that answer. Please, just get those 3 acts square in your head and be comfortable with your characters showing you where they're going to go, and enjoy it. That's the other thing is writing films is fun, and writing RPG games is fun if you let it be fun, and running them should be fun. I think that's what I've got for that one.
Fantastic. So we're getting towards the end now, folks. We've got about just over a quarter of an hour left for your questions. So please do keep them coming in. We've got time for some more. In the meanwhile, I did want to ask, given that I'm with Shiva so far, as you say, we had the core game. You've gone into a couple of different places with horror subgenres with that so far, and now we've gone to corporate, which is a different direction again. The core game in the first place was described as setting agnostic, described as trying to bring your favorite kind of pulpy movie settings to life in your own way. My question really is that is this just like the first of many more kind of strange off the wall new directions taking Shiva to new kind of genre fiction places? Because there are others. There's 100 different kind of subgenres of horror and horror comedy and so on that you could jump into and apply this rule set to with stuff created by you. Is that a plan or not?
Yeah. So weirdly, we have these kind of what Charlie and I like to think of, and I can already hear like Barney and Matt, our 2 lead business guys, just being like, no, be more specific. With Charlie and I, when we're designing these things and coming up with ideas, we have like what we call like the genre expansions, and then we have what we think of as like more story expansions. So genre expansions are like slasher, blockbuster, gothic. They cover these really big kind of knowing genres. We give you tons of new mechanics, big premium adventures. And we kind of design them with enough freedom to create that they come in at the same, price markup as the core rule book. And But when we did the story ones, and then that's what corporate really kind of flits the line between both of these things. Corporate is the one that's really ruined it for me in my head because it does both. The story expansions like Classified, like the Cursed Library, they give you these wonderful one-shot adventures, and they do give you some bits of the world. So it's I think of that as like, if you got a bunch of action figures as a kid, you're not necessarily going to play an episode of G.I. Joe or, whatever the Action Man advert was. You're going to do your own stuff. So if I give you Lance and I'm like, well, they're a secret organization, you're like, cool, I'll use that. And then you're off and you're doing your own thing. And that's what those story expansions are. So with corporate kind of blurring the lines between the two by being this odd child that they let me get away with for too long, we still want to keep doing things in that vein. So I run the Organized Play Initiative, the Directors Club, and this year we've released a bunch of plain text adventures, no art, no fancy guffins, all designed to be one shot, run in stores, run wherever you want, run at home, that are in different genres, but could be compiled into one book. We call that the Multiplex of Madness. It's like, you're stuck in a movie theater and today you're sucked into this cannibal Western. But next week you're going to do a sci-fi slasher that's a bit Terminator, a bit Aliens. And then, the other week you're going to do a straightforward gothic horror, not in the fantasy horror genre world we've done, but like you're stuck at a mansion in a storm, the lights have gone out and these strange waxen creatures are stalking the halls. And so we do those anthologies, we do those stories, and we'll always keep doing those as long as we want to keep writing, really. But our next kind of genre-led expansion, we still have that in mind. Like you say, there's so many genres to cover. We are doing paranormal. Now, the reason we're doing paranormal is because, again, we had all this with corporate where they're like, yeah, but it's really hard to take the funny out of this one. And, I was having this kind of rant to Charlie, and I was like, we should do one where it's really hard to put the funny in. And that's what we've done. So paranormal is going to be that. There is there's ghost hunting mechanics, which could be funny. There's exorcism mechanics, which could be funny. But in the exorcism adventure, if your players get it wrong, a child dies. And if you get the ghost hunting adventure wrong, like you might get like lobotomized. We went just full dark, atmospheric, really delving into the more cut and dry horror of paranormal, and that'll be the next major expansion we do. We've been releasing like little case files for that on our Patreon as we build up this repository of really nasty ghosts, demons, and interdimensional beings to populate the book with. But yeah, as long as we can always, because the joy, right, it is setting agnostic. We do have our own things like Cornwell, but that doesn't mean we couldn't do another sinister organization if we want to do a Weyland-Yutani. We can do that. So that as long as we're kind of passionate about writing, and Hollywood isn't knocking on Charlie or I's door right now, so we will keep doing it because it's so fulfilling. Actually, the first adventure I ever sold to Parable before they hired me full time was I wrote a screenplay for the undergrad me and Charlie were doing, and it was called Owlman. It was a throwback to 80s, 70s slasher films and a bit of giallo in there. And it had this mutated owl-like person killer stalking an abandoned film set. And Charlie just loved it. I wrote this in 2016. It's been in a drawer since then. And when Charlie spoke to me about it, when they were doing the slasher book, he was like, I want to buy it. He's like, I want you to write it as a Shiver adventure. I want you to just adapt it wholeheartedly. And I want it to be part of the Shiver world. And it was, it was the first thing I wrote for Shiver Slasher. Owlman is on that book. And it was a real joy. So, it's, and again, if the advice I would give to people if they want to make films or tell stories or not necessarily RPGs is adapt your story into a game and let your friends play it, because you will find out all of the plot holes and all of the bits of the story that don't hold up so much quicker when it's your friends kind of jumping through them and tearing it apart. But yeah. So there will always be more genres, I think, for us to delve into. I'd love to do a body horror focused one. Like maybe cyberpunky. I know Charlie really wants to do something with atomic monsters. Is a big passion for him. He loves the 50s Red Scare era of monster and sci-fi movies. So that's probably something we'll look at someday.
So there's a few irons in fires for more I guess you'd say story expansions as opposed to genre
Stories,
ones.
yeah. The genre ones, like I said, we have the paranormal, and
Yeah.
I can't talk about anything else that's in the genre pipeline, unfortunately. But we do have more. I think corporate blurring the lines for me personally, because I saw them as like these loose stories, but like it is a genre thing. Like we are really introducing so many mechanics, but it's a weird sci-fi genre is what we've actually done. So it's just this odd little thing. I'm looking here. I realize I have my Cornwell Consolidated lanyards, which we were giving out with the campaign and the big epic event we ran. So like we really did dive into corporate merch. You can get a stress ball with them on. So like we blurred the lines with that one a bit.
I really feel like the Cornwell Incorporated stress balls should be just made of spikes or stone. Just solid. We've got a little bit of time left, folks. We've got 10 minutes. 10 minutes left for your questions. So, if any of that has sparked your imagination, or there's something else that you want to know is in the noggins of Adam and Charlie for those upcoming expansions, please do ask some questions. In the meantime, there was something I wanted to ask, and it was about the paranormal thing. Actually, it's a really basic B question, but throw out some specific movies that are in your head. Like if you were doing some specific movies that are in your head that are like those are the ones that come to mind when you summon the creative space that you're looking at for that expansion. Like,
for paranormal, yeah. I mean. We when I was doing the exorcism adventure for that, which was it was different than anything else we'd done because it's introducing it's introducing the exorcism mechanics. So this has to be a template for everyone, but it also has to be a gripping adventure that really shows you the tone. So I watched every Exorcist movie I could get my hands on that wasn't absolute trash.
no Conjuring.
Oh yeah, well, The Conjuring, we watched a lot of when we were doing the original system because it's such an enjoyable franchise early on that like you can have these kind of like the pacing is good, the locations are nice and tight, like structurally sound. I won't get into any other quality of it talks, but I watched like The Exorcism of Emily Rose, I watched The Last Exorcism, I watched The Exorcist, The Exorcist 2, The Exorcist 3. I said I didn't delve into trash, but I have a soft spot for The Exorcist 3 especially. I watched The Taking of Deborah Logan, which is a wonderfully dark film that I will not spoil at all. What else? There was so many. I watched one. It had nuns. I watched a lot of things with nuns in because I used the nuns as a kind of setting motif for that adventure. We did the ghost hunting one was trickier because a lot of ghost hunting movies are and low budget is not bad. I love a lot of low budget movies. I love indie movies. What it is that I think anyone with a handy cam in the 2000s was like, I'm going to make a haunted movie and I'm going to be a ghost hunter. And it's like, yeah, it's so easy. But you can watch things like, the Blair Witch. You can watch, Graves, something. There's a really famous image from it with a woman with a twisted face screaming at the camera, which is one of Charlie's favorite references, and I just kind of like binged all back to back. I went to like the original Amityville Horror. I went just to kind of get this vibe of haunting, even though it's I would say a lot more accessible. Same with Poltergeist is a good one, but is more family friendly Spielbergian than what we were going for. I can't remember what the third. There's exorcisms, ghost hunting. Haunted houses, yeah. And then the haunted house thing is like you can watch everything under the sun. I watched Ghost Ship, which was a weird 2000s film. You've either heard of it or you have no idea. Like I watched Ghost Ship because we do the tarot cards, which then are like specific monsters that build on these that you could use in like, well, I'm going to do a haunted house and I want this thing in there kind of thing. But I was like, well, what if the haunted house was a ship? like, how does that change the mechanics that we've created? And so I watched Ghost Ship and tried to figure out, and Triangle as well, I think, which is not quite the same bag, but 13 Ghosts, someone just shouted. I have a soft spot for William Castle and all of his original films, House on Haunted, everything from that era. And the remake of 13 Ghosts, I love Matthew Lillard, so I'll watch anything with him in. But like, exorcisms, weirdly, there's a litany of exorcist films out there that are really, really good. That even me, as like, I was brought onto slasher as like an expert in slashers. Like I was this team slasherdemic for a while, but like there are so many exorcist movies out there that I had not seen. That I kind of like, when you start going down that path, there's a really great film where it's a Jewish man who is paid to perform the rite that they perform. I think he's Jewish. I'm going to really ruin myself here, but where they sit up with the body of a recently deceased family member, and they pay him to do it because for some reason no one else will, and he needs this money. And it is it's really engrossing, and it deals with things that we hadn't really seen elsewhere. Like, I really enjoyed that. The Last Shift is a good film about a haunted police station. I really enjoyed that one. What else? I'm trying to just think. I'm filling air, but there was definitely another one that was on the tip of my tongue as like these weird, like little niche ones that are absolutely worth it. Someone just put in the comments, William Castle would have loved 4D. He would have, something would have. But yeah, it's a ripe genre. And it's one, again, that will absolutely benefit from directors bringing a bit of atmos to what they are doing. Not to put all the weight on them, but like I've seen what some people in our community do, without poking, without prodding, just of their own accord, and like, it blows my mind. I used to run a lot of Call of Cthulhu, which is a very math-heavy horror game, but I really enjoyed the tension, the setting, the building. Very little sense of humor in most Call of Cthulhu. But seeing what people do with like Shiver, and they've got the hoods, they've got the candles, they've got the props, they've got fake blood, and they really just go in, and it's so great.
It is, as a genre of TTRPGs, it's probably at least on a level with D&D, Western fantasy, European-ish fantasy vibes in terms of encouraging people to dress up and do the proper costume thing, like have the decor, have the atmos. Like I think I've ever played a sci-fi RPG where anyone bothered, like, whereas horror RPGs, people want to. It's the same as watching a horror movie, I guess. Like, the atmosphere is everything, the tension is everything.
That's cool. It. I mean, you can get the tension from putting them in the story and having them care about their characters, and that's kind of how we do it. And we really we give you all the tension tools that you have. Getting that real fear atmosphere, like, we can't give you that in a box. I wish we could. We're not Hellraiser. We're not the Hell Priest. We can't do this. But like, I did just want to say really quickly, I saw someone ask me what my favorite thing on the shelf is, and I kind of forget this is here. I have one thing that I will point out. I don't really have a favorite. I will say I have the novelization of Terrifier 2 up there, which I read in a day, and I just loved it. It's great. It really works as a voice next to my novelization of Dawn of the Dead, the original, and it's really good. It adds a weird amount of lore to the Terrifier 2 mythos that you didn't know you needed. And someone else, and I think it was the same person, asked about my favorite Friday the 13th, which that was a gift from a friend when Shiver Slasher came out. Part 6. I'm a big fan of Part 6. It was kind of the first metatextual, even though not in an overly heavy-handed way. It was the first kind of slasher film to do we get it, we know what a slasher film is. The paintball sequence is great. The two kids hiding under the bed who know all the camp counselors are going to die is great. But the kills with Jason don't suffer. It never veers too far into comedic pastiche to kind of ruin it. I love the James Bond opening sequence as well. Love that film. I also have a soft spot for the 3D one, and I think that, again, that's the William Castle in me, is like, the new weird harbinger of doom pointing the eyeball at the screen and the camera hanging on it for way too long. I love that. Why wouldn't you?
We have had a real tour through the horror influences in both your career personally, your taste personally, and in the core game of Shiver, and specifically corporate. It's been a real treat. There's one question that I've recently decided that we're going to ask all of our AMA guests, which is entirely irrelevant, but has provided some fun in the past. And that is, what's your favorite recipe to cook?
I make stews. I have a stew. I do one stew recipe and kind of bend it to my will. It's like the easiest thing in the world. I hate casseroles. Don't ask me why. Because a casserole is an oven stew. I know, I'm aware. But I do a hell of a stew. I like the warmth of it. I like to smell it cooking. I like to see it cooking. I like the atmosphere that a good stew brings to your house, to your guests. If you're me, to your feral greyhound. I like that part of it. I think the experience of making the stew. I used to live with a wonderful, wonderful Hong Kong guy. His name was Wong, and he used to make what he called bubbling pot, which was essentially the same thing. And all of his friends would come over, and none of them spoke a word of English, and they would all throw things in this pot. They would pour cans of Guinness in, and it would always be the best stew that you've ever had in your life. And it just exists. It was communal. So stew. I will make a stew when I'm down. I will make a stew if my dog's had an operation, and I'll do a dog-friendly stew. I will always do a stew.
Hugely respect that choice. Something bubbling on the stove, like Baba Yaga's hut in the woods vibe. Like you've come in from the storm. You're a little bit damaged, and there
is nothing more enticing or more ominous. Is there? It's perfect. It's exactly what I want.
Also, when a meal is poisoned in a movie, it's always a goddamn stew.
It is, yeah. Not that I've done that thus far. The other thing I make is I do a damn good gingerbread. But that is, again, it's all witches in the woods with me. So there you go.
Well, there's the quote to end on. It's witches in the woods all the way down. Adam Holloway, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure. Folks in the audience, thank you so much for coming along, asking your great questions. Hope you've enjoyed this. We will be picking one of you at random tomorrow to get two of you at random, tomorrow to get one of those starter sets for Shiver. And you will see all of this lovely stuff. If you couldn't make the whole thing, or you have friends that couldn't make it today because it's Thanksgiving, this will be going up on YouTube in the next few days, and we'll hopefully be writing it up on the site as well. So thank you again, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Adam, and we'll see you again for the next one.